My name is Matthew Burton. I'm the Manager of Communications and Stakeholder Relations for the Windfall Center. It's a kind of grandiose way of saying I'm the guy that goes out and talks to people. The Windfall Ecology Center has been around for about 12 years now. We're an environmental, not-for-profit group, first and foremost. We do a number of different things, including water education, energy efficiency work, transportation work, as well as government lobbying and activation. And that's really how we ended up getting involved in solar. We really believe in renewable energies, and that's become kind of the core of what we do is espousing renewables across Ontario. And we were part of the group that pushed the government to have the feed-in tariff in the first place. And then when they started going through the legislation, the Windfall Ecology Center was some of the key policy advisors on how to develop the feed-in tariff. And now, because of the fact that there is so much misinformation out there, Windfall has entered into starting to do some of our own solar installations as well, just to show how the process really should be and to work with the different agencies involved to bring a lot more truth and a lot more clarity into how the process is going to work. The other thing that we do is large-scale community projects, such as wind turbines. So some of you may have heard of our project on Georgina Island, the Puckwis Community Wind Farm. It's a 10 megawatt cooperative project that's being developed in conjunction with the Chippewas of Georgina Island. So we do renewable energies at a very small scale and at a very large scale. So really what we're here today to provide is that advice and those answers based on sustainability science. First and foremost, we're a not-for-profit organization. We really believe in renewables, and we believe that the only way that renewables can spread across Ontario is for everyone to have the right information, to have a good install, to have realistic returns on investment. So the first part of the presentation that Todd's going to give today is going to go through kind of what the process is and what you can expect as realistic returns on investment, what the process is realistically. We just got back from doing a home show this weekend, and we literally had to dispute everything almost every other competitor there was saying, because they were making outrageous claims about what your rate of return would be, outrageous claims about how quickly you could get the money back, outrageous claims just on how they could calculate that return on investment. They were looking at they'd look at your property from a satellite image and say, you're going to make $100,000. And I went back and said, how could you possibly figure that out? You don't know if there's a tree next to that barn. You don't know what the condition of that roof is. So we really, and we're going to talk about this later in the afternoon or later in the morning, is what are some of the questions that you should be asking installers, especially the ones that are knocking on your door? What are some of the key questions that you can ask them to really weed out where they are in the market and where they are? Are they a fly-by-night, or do they really know what they're talking about? But first, let's talk a bit about the process. Let's talk about how Windfall approaches it, and I'm sure it's similar to a lot of reputable companies. It is a lengthy process, and that's the first thing that we should say. This presentation, it might take a bit. I guess to try and speed the process up, how many people right now have already started an OPA process or have some sort of application into the OPA? So a little less than a quarter. How many people are looking at a system greater than 10 kilowatts, so looking at a full fit contract? So basically most of your, and how many are looking at ground mounted or roof mounted? How many people don't know what I'm talking about? Perfect. So that really, if you have any questions, I think Todd and I both work best if you just ask the question as we're giving the presentation. Works a lot easier, and I think it's more beneficial for the group. But looks like most of the room is looking for probably a roof-mounted microfit system. But Todd will go through, and if you have any questions, by all means, just ask us.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Todd Gwillimbury. You might recognize the name, being Marsh Farmers yourself. And what I'd like to go through with you is basically a brief overview of the microfit system, of the FIT program in general. I'll take you through the process of microfit, and I'll go through it in detail, since that seems to be where most of the interest lies. I do also have information on the FIT program, which I'll touch on briefly if I have time. But in keeping with the expectations of the group here, I'll stick to the microfit for the most part. So for those of you who don't know, the Ontario FIT program essentially is a 20-year contract between any independent electricity producer and the Ontario government whereby the government guarantees a set rate based on the size of your system, paid to the producer for every kilowatt that they inject into the grid. There are two classes. There's a microfit, which is any project less than 10 kilowatts, and then there's the FIT. And the acronym stands for feed-in tariff, I should say. There's a micro feed-in tariff and the feed-in tariff. And the feed-in tariff applies to any project greater than 10 kilowatts.
Excuse me, can I just get you present from that side so we can see your face?
Sure.
Thanks.
So again, there are two categories for solar, I should say. There are ground mount, which can be either fixed or on tracking systems. And then there are roof mount, which can be installed flat, flush, or angled to capture the sun in the best way possible. A few details, there are many details obviously, but a few pertinent details are that this program, this feed-in tariff, is being paid for by every electricity consumer in Ontario. There are obviously been some increases to the rate that you all pay for your electricity, and part of that money, I should say a very, very small portion, is being used to fund this feed-in tariff. With this mechanism, it allows the public to actually benefit from this renewable energy initiative being put in place by the Ontario government. And the program itself has been modeled after very successful programs in Europe, one of which was the German feed-in tariff, which was introduced incrementally, but for the most part, you could say the start date was 2003. And since then, the program has become ubiquitous throughout the country. And they are now reaching a point where they have 12% of their electricity production derived from renewable sources. So it's a very popular program in Europe, and we're now just bringing it to North America. I should mention that the project, or the program, is scheduled for review in 2011. At that time, the government will reassess the program, and there will most likely be a rate reduction in the amount that they offer for their contracts. Matthew, who has some political experience, is under the impression that it won't happen before the election. And so there is still plenty of time for you to get your applications in and to take advantage of this FIT program while it's at its most lucrative.
Todd, can you speak up, please?
Sure, no problem.
Yeah, we're faced this way, one of the two.
Okay, we'll do. So, the microfit application, the main issue that a lot of people are having right now is that, and I'm sure you've heard about it in the news, is that people have received contracts from the OPA. They went ahead and installed their project, and now they're finding that the LDC is returning to them saying that there is not capacity on the grid to connect their project. And so they've invested a lot of money in this, and now they are finding that they are outside of the program. They cannot qualify. I'm going to go through the process, and I'm going to describe it the way it exists today, because there was a change that occurred on December 8th, whereby the OPA enforced a new rule which stated that you must contact your LDC before you receive your conditional offer from the OPA, and that would ensure that there would be capacity on the grid to connect your project. LDC is your local distribution company. So that would be your Hydro One for rural areas. For other areas in York Region is Power Stream. They serve most of York Region. And so every particular area has their own LDC, but for the most part it's Hydro One. They are the people who actually provide you your electricity. They're not the generators of it, but they're the distributors of electricity. And so, like I said, I will go through the program the way it exists today. Bear in mind that this is and since most of you are new to this program, it's a safe method to do so. For those of you who already have a contract, it's most likely been the case that you received your offer before you contacted your LDC. But in any event, I'll go through the program the way it is designed today. And so your first step will be to call an installation company up and ask them to come perform a solar assessment on your property. What they will do is they will show up with a device similar to this. This is a digital device. It's called the Solmetric Sun Eye. Other companies use a Solar Pathfinder, which is essentially a manual device. And what it does is it takes a fisheye photo of your rooftop, and it factors in considerations such as roof angle, your orientation, your azimuth, whether or not you're facing south or not. It takes into consideration your latitude and many other factors. most importantly of which is shading, and the way shading will affect your solar access throughout the year, both winter and summer. And they determine the potential that your site has to receive sunlight and convert that sunlight into electricity through a solar panel. And so they will perform this assessment. They will determine the most appropriate size project for you based on your rooftop space. And they will determine the most appropriate materials to use in the project, the most appropriate equipment. With that design in mind, they will then work the financial figures for you, create a financial analysis of your project, determine your ROI based on these projected solar access figures, and they can then explain to you how attractive this investment would be for you. So that's your first step. With that, your next step is to talk to your LDC and receive, with PowerStream, it's known as a Form E. Essentially, the information you provide them is your location, the size of system you want to install, and who you are. And they will look within their network, within their database, and they will determine if there is capacity in that area to install another electricity producing device. And so with this Form E, you would then approach the OPA, and in fact you can actually approach the OPA before you have your Form E, but they will not offer you a contract until they have seen your Form E. And I'm saying Form E, that's the term that is used at PowerStream. It may be a different name under Hydro One. Form C under Hydro One. Now, PowerStream also has a Form C, which in fact comes later in the process. They've introduced this new form, this Form E. So I'm assuming that Hydro One has also introduced a new form. Whether or not they call it the same name, I'm not sure. So, like I said, you receive your Form E from your LDC, from Hydro One, from PowerStream. You then will submit your application with the OPA, and the OPA, upon receiving your Form E, will process your application, and if everything is attractive and if everything is feasible, you will receive your conditional offer. Now you should note on this timeline here that the conditional offer can take up to 3 months to be received. The average time that they're giving right now, and this is after talking to a few installers, is roughly 6 weeks. However, some people receive it in a week, some people receive it in 3 months. It really comes down to the rate that the OPA is processing these applications, and that's changing all the time since the project itself is changing and evolving all the time. And so the largest time frame that you need to be concerned with is the processing of your application, since that will take the most amount of time in terms of your project from assessment to connection. So following your receipt of a conditional offer, you can then go ahead with your construction. That's the second phase of the project. Am I talking loud enough? Can everyone hear me at the back? Yeah? Okay. Following your receipt of your application, you can then go ahead and produce your Form C. Now your Form C can be filled out before you receive your application. However, they require a lot more information, which requires an in-depth analysis of your project, of your particular connection at your home. And so it is our recommendation that you don't go ahead with the Form C until you have actually received your offer to connect and your conditional offer from the OPA. I should also mention the OPA, I'm throwing this acronym around, is the Ontario Power Authority. And that is a branch of the Ontario government, and that is the organization that you in fact enter into a contract with. So upon completion of your Form C, in most municipalities in Ontario, for rooftop installation, you need a building permit. And so this building permit is your next step. Your building permit can take up to 5 weeks, because you need to have a qualified person come out to your house and actually inspect it and perform all the paperwork involved.